Well, good evening once again. Day 1266 of the Trump administration. 118 days to go until our presidential election. The rift between Donald Trump and his top infectious disease experts is growing, it appears, even as coronavirus cases are growing substantially, with another 58,238 new infections just in the course of today. Over 1,000 people died just today. Trump is now publicly dismissing the warnings and recommendations of the Centers for Disease Control and Dr. Anthony Fauci, who lately has been seen and heard everywhere but behind the official podium at the White House, and who was notably missing from today's rare on-camera task force briefing. This afternoon, the White House press secretary was asked directly about Fauci's status.
Does the president still have confidence in Dr. Fauci?
The president has confidence in the conclusions of our medical experts, but it's up to him to determine what to do with that information and to take what we hear from Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, and others, and take what he values in their opinion and come to the ultimate consensus that's best for this country.
What Donald Trump is hearing from Dr. Fauci and others are regular warnings about the current explosion of COVID-19 cases in our country, largely in the Sun Belt states, and what we are in for if we can't get this under control. Here is Dr. Fauci earlier today.
What we were seeing is exponential growth. It went from an average of about 20,000 to 40 and 50,000. That's doubling. I think any state that is having a serious problem, that state should seriously look at shutting down. We've got to get our arms around this. We've got to be stringent. We've got to relook at what's going on.
That goes against Trump's assertion that the U.S. is, quote, in a good place when it comes to handling this virus. With November in clear view, Donald Trump is flatly saying there will be no more shutdowns. He says the country is open for good. It's staying open. His latest push is to reopen our schools. This morning, Trump issued a threat and attacked the CDC's guidance for resuming classes. Quote, in Germany, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and many other countries, schools are open with no problems. The Dems think it would be bad for them politically if U.S. schools opened before the November election, may cut off funding if not open. I disagree with the CDC on their very tough and expensive guidelines for opening schools. I will be meeting with them. The recommendations are aimed at social distancing. They include keeping class windows open, keeping desks 6 feet apart, lunch in classrooms, staggering arrivals, wearing masks. Hours later, the vice president, along with members of the coronavirus task force, Secretary of Education, and again, notably without Dr. Fauci, were left to make Trump's case to the nation.
We're actually seeing early indications of a percent of positive testing flattening in Arizona and Florida and Texas. It's absolutely essential that we get our kids back into classroom for in-person learning. We can't let our kids fall behind academically.
Can you explain why the president is threatening to cut funding from schools at a time when educators are saying they need more so they can safely reopen?
Caitlin, first and foremost, it's what you heard from the president is just a determination to provide the kind of leadership from the federal level that says that we're going to get our kids back to school. The president said today we just don't want the guidance to be too tough, and that's the reason why next week CDC is going to be issuing a new set of tools, 5 different documents that will be giving even more clarity on the guidance going forward.
That reporter you heard there, Caitlin Collins at CNN, confirmed tonight the last time the president was at a meeting of the coronavirus task force was in April. No one knew what the vice president was talking about there, what data he was going by, as Arizona, Florida, and Texas are struggling to get anywhere near flattening their curves. Mike Pence also got backup from the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, who controls relief funding for school districts.
It's not a matter of if schools should reopen. It's simply a matter of how. They must fully open and they must be fully operational. And how that happens is best left to education and community leaders.
Late this afternoon, the White House had its turn to weigh in on the president's rejection of the CDC reopening guidelines.
The president and the CDC clearly don't seem to be on the same page about what the guidance is.
The CDC is very much on the same page as the president. They are on the same page. The president's routinely briefed about the coronavirus each and every day.
Did the White House pressure the CDC to change public health guidelines that were reached in accordance with medical professionals because the president doesn't like them?
No, not at all.
What is it that the president thinks is too strict and too expensive and too impractical?
One specific example I'll give you is on food services. Have children bring their own meals as feasible? Well, there are 22 million children in this country who depend on these meals at schools, who depend on access to nutrition in schools. So that's one example.
So is that just one thing that the president doesn't like? Is there anything else?
Well, there are several.
New York City school system, the nation's largest, has already announced its classes will be limited to only 1 to 3 days a week. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says next month he'll announce New York's plan to reopen the schools, and he slammed the president for threatening to withhold funding.
Doesn't work that way. It's not legal, it's not constitutional, and you're not going to bully New Yorkers. That's not going to happen, right? Threaten me, threaten me, threaten me. How many times have we been through this? I'm still here, right? Do you think the threat is going to work?
As all this unfolds, the administration's task force coordinator is now advising people living in those regions where the coronavirus is spiking to return to the White House original Phase 1 recommendations.
Asking the American people in those counties and in those states to not only use the face coverings, not going to bars, not going to indoor dining, but really not gathering in homes either, and decreasing those gatherings back down to our Phase 1 recommendation, which was 10 or less.
So that, by any other name, is a form of reopening walkback. And then New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy just today ordered masks to be worn wherever people are gathered outside and where socially distancing is impossible. The the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, who has COVID-19, tonight signed a similar order for her city's residents. Meanwhile, the Tulsa City County Health Department director now says that Tulsa campaign rally the president held in late June, while poorly attended, quote, likely contributed to an increase, a spike they're having in coronavirus cases. Tulsa County in Oklahoma reported 261 confirmed new cases on Monday. That's a one-day record high. Another 206 cases on Tuesday. You'll recall several members of the president's advance staff also tested positive after that rally. The campaign insists it encourages masks and the use of hand sanitizer. Trump, as you may know, plans to hold his next rally on Saturday in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.